What is up there everyone, it's the Guy with the Gamertag here, and today I'm going to talk about the Scout Pistol Star card in Star Wars Battlefront. Now in my personal opinion, this is a massively underrated star card. I think it's really useful, and most of the reason that it's overlooked is people in close quarters game modes generally gravitate towards grenades and the jump pack, because they are very good all-round abilities, simply because they can get you around the map quickly and they have really good area of effect damage, and it just kind of makes sense. However, I think the Scout Pistol actually has a very good niche which it can fit into these close quarters game modes. And even in Walker Assault, I find myself equipping this star card and then just running around as an Imperial or even a Rebel and just popping people in close quarters with this pistol. And that's where this gun has a niche. In close quarters it will absolutely destroy people as long as you hit your 2 shots. Essentially, as soon as you press the trigger, it will fire 2 bullets in a burst. If you hit both the shots in close quarters, you will drop them almost certainly. There are very few situations where I've hit 2 shots in close quarters and it's not killed someone. I even find sometimes that actually I can pop someone at fairly medium to longer range if I get headshots on them. This gun does a lot of damage, and what's more, it doesn't really have too many drawbacks. It's got a pretty decent cooldown time of 9 seconds, which I generally find that once I've used this star card, because the way I personally use it is I'll start getting into a gunfight, either it'll hit a point where me and the enemy are both actually having to wait for our guns to cool down, or I've killed one person and I don't want to overheat, so I switch out to the Scout Pistol and then I pop someone. In the time it's taken the card to recharge, I've usually repositioned, so I don't have to worry about being caught off guard and not being able to use it. I find this very useful because that means I can just move around the map. I can take out multiple people with the combination of my primary weapon and the card, and I'll always have a grenade and backup if I'm playing a close quarters game mode like Drop Zone or TDM, because it's just easy. Because then if you want to run away, you can just throw it on the ground and just leg it to try and get out of there and get out of the gunfight. And I just find it's a very versatile card because you can use it with almost any type of weapon. I've used it with the D817, which is of course a great close quarters weapon, because there's 2 ways you can use it with this weapon. Firstly, the D817, as I said, is a good close quarters weapon. So what might happen is you may have taken on a couple of enemies, you might have taken them out, but then your gun is very close to overheating. So what you can then do, switch out to the Scout Pistol. If someone else rounds the corner, you can then drop them with it and switch back and let your gun cool down. I find that to be a very useful tactic because people generally don't expect it. As soon as they see you stop shooting, they're going to start peeking around the corner. I find this to be the biggest advantage the Scout Pistol has, is when your enemy decides to peek you, and you can catch them off guard, because they generally, if you're in a firefight and they've backed around a corner and you're just firing suppressive fire to keep them around the corner, as soon as you stop, they're going to assume that you can't fire anymore, that you've probably overheated your weapon or you're swapping out to do something else. The draw time on the Scout Pistol is fairly quick, so you can draw it out, and by the time they've peaked, so long as you can get your crosshair on them and you can fire the 2 shots, it will drop them instantly and they won't have enough time to kill you. There may be odd occasions, maybe they've decided to use the shotgun, or maybe they've also pulled out a Scout Pistol. Generally, I found that this tactic really works and you can easily drop your enemies, and it will almost always catch them off guard because they won't expect you to have this Scout Pistol because it's such an underrated card. And so you can actually generally catch a lot of people off guard. You can then either let your primary cool down so you can take on more enemies, or then back off. And I just find that to be a really useful tactic with it. And then also, if you're using a close quarters primary and you decide to try and engage someone at longer ranges, you maybe get a few shots on them. The trick with the Scout Pistol is that it still deals pretty decent damage at sort of medium range, where you'd expect to probably lose gunfights if you're using a D817. You can actually still do about 50 damage with the Scout Pistol, so you can fire quite a few shots with your D817, maybe get close to overheating and you just haven't dropped them yet, swap out to the Scout Pistol and you can almost always finish them off. Although I will say, taking on people at longer ranges with just the Scout Pistol isn't really advisable, because it's not designed to be that. It's not designed as a medium or long range weapon. It's for close quarters. You just pull it out, pop off a couple of shots, and then you just switch back to your primary and carry on business as normal. And this card also works really well with longer range weapons. You're using an A280C or a E11, which are generally good medium and long range blasters. If you use those and then you find yourself in close quarters, maybe someone's about to round a corner, or you're just finding yourself with a few too many enemies you can deal with, the Scout Pistol is always a good way of just taking one of them out. If you walk behind a group of enemies and you've taken out one of them turns around to see you, just pop out the Scout Pistol, take them down, and then you can swap back. I just find it's a very versatile weapon because you can just draw it, fire it, and then go back to your primary, and I just find it an extremely useful card. Now, I just wanted to make this video because this is such an underrated card. I very rarely see it in multiplayer matches, and I think that actually it deserves a lot more credit than it gets, because it is actually a very viable and extremely useful card, and you can even use it in the bigger game modes. I like to use it in Walker Assault, especially as an Imperial, because all you've got to do is defend the Walkers, which means taking out as many Rebel soldiers as you possibly can. So using this card is really useful because I can take them out from range with something like an E11, but then if I get into close quarters I can just pop the pistol out and then just double tap them, and it will just take them down instantly, and they won't expect it, not most of the time. If you're peeking them and you suddenly pop round the corner and fire the 2 shots, because the 2 shots fire almost instantaneously. So you just peek round the corner, you just fire the 2 shots, and they're usually dead before they've had too much of a chance to react. I wouldn't say it's a particularly overpowered card because obviously when you're at longer ranges it's not going to drop people and it's not going to be so viable at those ranges. So it'll depend on how you like to play as a player. If you like to play aggressively and you maybe like to rush up and just go and try and shoot people in the face, not really caring. If you just like to run up in people's faces and just spray and pray, this might be a good weapon for you because it's just a nice little backup that you can use to take people out unsuspectingly. But anyway, I do hope you've enjoyed this video. This has been the guy from the Gamertag, and I'll see you on another video.
Oh, hell no! Daddy's back in action, baby! Oh, shit, you mother...